Us now is the publisher of Extra Points and college sports writer Matt Brown, friend of the program. Matt, it's great to have you back on BYU Sports Nation.
Thanks, friends. Always good to be here and spend some time with you.
We are trying to answer some questions that we don't think anybody has the answer to, but that's exactly what we're going to discuss here today, because we all want to know, is college football going to happen? What's the future of college sports with COVID-19 and everything that's surrounding it? So just go ahead and give us your disclaimer, the first 30 seconds here, on if you think college sports is going to happen in the fall and why.
So my disclaimer is, if I was an epidemiologist, Extra Points would cost a lot more than $7 a month. I would have much better answers. What I can tell everybody is that it's great that schools and athletic departments and programs are creating plans, that they're trying to figure out ways to execute social distancing. They're looking at ways to maybe bring in diminished capacity for college football stadiums. But ultimately, a lot of this is completely out of the control of anybody in an athletic department. It's going to be up to governors. It's going to be up to state public officials, and it's going to be up to how well we as a country are able to get a handle on COVID. And we can set up a bunch of plans, but if the disease looks different in August, all those plans are going to have to go out the window.
Yeah, and there's so many questions to be answered. One of them, obviously, is crowds and how that's going to happen. And today, BYU announced that they will have a combination of in-person classes with online, and after Thanksgiving, encouraged to go home. So I'm wondering what kind of crowds we're going to have anywhere. Obviously, it's not going to be what it was, but will there be a crowd at all, in your opinion?
Yeah, a lot of that's going to depend on the institution, because having a crowd, even a diminished crowd, is going to require you to have some extra space. So it's going to be a little bit easier if you have a stadium that seats 60, 80, 100,000 people versus one that seats maybe 10. You're going to need to be able to close off some of those sections so people can have space. You're also going to have to change how you do concessions. You're going to change how you do restrooms. You might have to bring in prepackaged food. And the financial calculus for whether that's worth it for schools is going to vary from institution to institution. Like, I would not be shocked if we have some FCS programs or maybe some institutions that have smaller crowds decide to go completely empty stadium or just essential personnel for those. Whereas maybe my alma mater, Ohio State, which depends on the gajillion dollars that they make from these stadiums, they're going to make every possible accommodation that they can to get a couple, tens of thousands of people in that stadium.
Matt Brown, publisher of Extra Points, college sports writer, is with us on BYU Sports Nation. No matter the statistics you look at, and I almost hesitate going here because when you bring stats into it, everyone kind of is like, well, where are you getting those statistics from? It has become clear that younger athletes are not as at risk as the older demographic. That said, at what point do we say, well, because they're young and they can stay healthy, like it's okay. Just let them sign a waiver that if they get sick, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's play college sports. Like, where do we draw the line here when we're talking about the safety of individuals, no matter the age?
It's a great question. And that's something that I think university administrators need to have really difficult conversations about. And what I think is so important to remember here is that, yes, it is true that if you are a healthy Division I caliber athlete, you're 18 to 24, your risk of death is low. Your risk of potential other health complications is still there. And it's important for all of us to realize that football teams and athletic departments in general aren't just run by 24-year-olds. It's not always a 24-year-old that's sanitizing that locker room. There's definitely not always 24-year-olds coaching these football teams. A lot of football head coaches across Division I are old. A lot of them are overweight. A lot of them have some of these other health considerations. The people who are teaching these classes, the people who are trainers and media members and all of the accompanying personnel, they're not all 24-year-olds. And so we all need to, and I say we, meaning fans, media members, the institutions collectively need to realize it's not just the risk of our defensive tackles that we need to consider. It's the risk for our entire university community. And my hope is that we'll look at all that holistically when we're making decisions about when we should continue play.
Absolutely. And we're seeing a lot of positive tests coming out of voluntary workouts, and no one has really answered the question. And again, these are just unanswerable questions, but we got to discuss. Yeah. When there's a positive test in season, what does that mean, right? So let's say the quarterback who interacts with the ball a lot, obviously, gets a positive test. Is he just out for 2 weeks, and your backup suddenly, who was probably exposed to him, is in quarantine too? Like, how's that going to work?
Yeah, these are the important questions. I mean, Bob Bowlesby in the Big 12 has said, like, we need to make peace with the fact that games are going to get canceled during the season. And if I'm a coach, you completely reconfigure how you set up your practices. You don't want your position groups working together necessarily, because if your quarterback tests positive and he's been hanging out with all the other quarterbacks, well, are you going to run the single wing next week? Are you going to do an installation with no quarterbacks? It's going to be tricky for a lot of these position groups. And what I think as fans, if there's going to be a college football season, we need to make peace with the fact that it's not going to be like anything we've seen for 100 years. Games are going to be canceled. It's the schedule that we have set up right now, I feel pretty confident, is not going to be the complete football schedule that we're going to see by the end of this football season. There's going to be games that might be scheduled in September that get moved to November. There's going to be the depth of these football programs is going to be challenged completely. And, if you're an athletic director and you're thinking about firing your football coach, you got to put a big old asterisk by the season, because I don't know what you can fully take from it. And if as a fan, as a college football collective, we're okay with that very weird season, then maybe that's okay. But don't be surprised if some walk-ons or third stringers that you were not expecting to play this season have to, just because people got sick.
It's the replacements college edition. That's what we're going to have this fall. And you brought up the schedule. We are 10 weeks and 2 days away from the season, and no one has moved a game, right? Because we don't know yet what's going to happen. But we're only 10 weeks out, which is shocking that we haven't, I guess, figured everything out. And then perhaps there's a wave again, around a time when you get a flu more often. I mean, it's just going to be wild.
Yeah, actually, we have seen a couple of games canceled, and this just happened. But the Patriot League, which is FCS League, I think just yesterday said, we're going conference only. And so I think the beginning of the year, Fordham's going to Hawaii, so that game's not happening. So Hawaii is going to have to look for a replacement or make some changes here. You see a couple of HBCUs at the FCS level already canceling games. I suspect that's going to continue a little bit. And if you're a school that really relies on television money or big gates, you want to be as conservative as possible, because you really need that money. We have to understand, safety-wise, it might be best if we punt on this season. But there's so many athletic departments that are so dependent on this money for running their entire athletic department, not just their football team, that they're going to do everything possible, even if it means a kind of stupid season, to make this happen.
Matt Brown, publisher of Extra Points, a college sports insider, with us on BYU Sports Nation. Matt, when we talk about fans watching games, and you brought it up a little bit, saying, hey, if you have a bigger stadium, then you have more room to work with. You can try and get a few thousand people in. You can section some places off, things like that. But at what point do we say to the fans, okay, if you are going to come into the stadium, you have to sign this consent waiver and everybody has to wear a mask? And how do you regulate these things? So I guess my question is, what type of fan engagement do you foresee when it comes to in-person college football?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I got to be honest with you. I'm probably not going to go to any games this season, even if I'm in a press box, because so many of the things that I like about college football, probably not going to be able to do. It's hard for me to imagine a tailgate, which is a big group of people getting close together and sharing utensils and everything. I don't know how you can really do that and have it be any fun at all if you're masked up and distanced. You can't scream the same way if you're wearing a mask. And if I'm an athletic director, if I'm a university general counsel, and I'm legally allowed to make people sign that waiver or mask up, I'm absolutely doing it, because we seem to know right now that's a great way to spread this disease. It's just to scream next to each other. But if you're a fan, you're thinking, is it worth me spending $55 if I don't get to eat the same food, don't get to scream the same way, don't get to share the same parking lot experience? It's a lot cheaper for me to watch this game on TV where I can do all those things and feel safe. That's already a trend we're seeing in college athletics. I have to think that this football season is going to expedite that trend a little bit.
And I'm interested to see what that means for, let's say at Ohio State, or let's just say BYU. This is BYU Sports Nation. Yeah. There's 60,000 seat stadium. Let's say half the people are like, you know what, I don't want to go. But there's still 20,000 that want to get in. They only allow 15,000 in. How are you deciding who gets in? This is going to be the craziest college football season ever, because we've got so many unanswered questions, and we are 10 weeks out.
Yeah, and everyone's doing this differently right now. You have some schools that are saying, okay, only the super big money donors and the people who've been season ticket holders since the 50s, you can come in. And some are saying only the students. And some are trying to do a lottery. And if you're a bean counter and you're just worried about money, yeah, you want to go bring in, Mitt Romney and his 12 richest friends and go bring all of those guys in so they'll keep donating to the department. But is that going to be the best fan experience? Is that the best way to cultivate future BYU fans. I mean, if nothing else, this whole enterprise should be for the students. It's not an easy answer. And the answer, I think, has to look different, because if there's one thing that this whole crisis has really made clear, all of our universities are very, very different. They're in different cities. They're experiencing the virus differently. They have different student bodies. They have different priorities. And so what makes sense for BYU and what makes sense for Iowa and what makes sense for Hawaii, they're all going to look really different. And, some people are going to be frustrated by that. Some people may not, but you have to do what's best for your community.
Matt, a couple of things before you go. Number one, Tom Holmoe wants to know how other BYU fans can subscribe to your newsletter and get updates.
I mean, listen, I appreciate his support. I appreciate all of your support. You can subscribe by going to mattbrown.substack.com. You can get 2 issues of Extra Points a week for free. It details all of the off-the-field stories that impact what we see on the field in college athletics. You can also subscribe for just $7 a month or $70 a year, and you'll get 4 issues a week, plus some exclusive podcasts and other insider college athletics information.
Good stuff. Join Tom Holmoe, the subscriber, and that's an excellent Freedom Bowl pennant you have behind you.
That's awesome, man.
Thank you. I got to tell you, it was really hard to find a good BYU pennant that wasn't enormous on the internet. If any of you guys have any old stuff from the 60s or something, drop me a Twitter DM. I might want to buy it from you. I got this wall here in my office of all these places I've lived, and I figured the MTC was a long enough excuse for me to buy some BYU stuff. So I got that up on the wall too.
Matt, great to catch up with you, man. Very intriguing stuff. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah, no problem, fellas. Anytime. Be well.
Matt